Hello, hello, hello everyone, and welcome back to my Legend of Alex world. Today, we are going to be talking about the Temple of Time. Now, the reason I'm talking about the Temple of Time here first is, well, first of all, this is the oldest part of the Legend of Alex world, but most importantly, I just finished talking about how to do Gothic architecture, and this is going to be built using Gothic architecture, which is a little bit up for debate, since in the games it can't decide whether it's Gothic or whether it's supposed to be Romanesque, but I'm going to build it as Gothic. But as you can see, as this is the oldest build here, it needs help. I built this before I knew how Gothic architecture actually worked. It was my best guesstimate as to how it worked, and honestly, these vaults are more like domes than they are like a proper ribbed vault. One of the main problems I faced when trying to make this build is actually that I was trying to make it look approximately like how you see it in the game. So unfortunately what that meant is we have some weird roof lines that don't make any sense. We have things like these windows that lead into literally nothing, so fake windows, which is probably one of my least favorite things you can put in a build. We have some really odd windows here, and the whole thing is built out of walls, which actually caused me a lot of problems. You see, apparently light travels straight through walls, so even in parts where I didn't want lighting to seep through, you're still getting if you look at the skylight, my skylight is ridiculously bright throughout this whole build, except for in the middle here, because I built the walls out of 2 layers of wall blocks, and while that made it thinner, it also means that the lighting is totally screwed up in this build. I also have to point out this hideous exterior here. Not only does it not look like how it's supposed to look, like in the game or anything like that, it's also dumb. Like, we have things like this that leads to nothing, which is awful for this facade. It doesn't make any sense, it's not lined up with anything, and it kind of makes me upset. We also have this ginormous tower that's just sticking up in the back, and this is an in-game design. Now, what actually makes that tower is the room that has the Master Sword in it. I was trying to keep this interior as like the game as I possibly could, and some of the problem is that there's this really thin hallway that then leads to this ginormous tower. And when we look at the actual in-game schematic for the Temple of Time, it is a disproportionately large tower compared to the rest of the build. It's silly. And you'd think that maybe it's just one of those things where, well, maybe the inside just happens to look different than the outside does, except they actually bothered to implement it into the outside of the build. Now, I know what you're thinking. Shells, it's just a game. This is your build. You can build it however you want it to look. Well, yes, but also no. I can make some minor changes here and there, but I overall want it to look like the same building. Specifically because my Legend of Alex world here is supposed to take place about 100 years before Ocarina of Time takes place. And this is supposed to be the one and the only Temple of Time. Having said that, I am also perfectly aware that the Temple of Time is featured in multiple games, and it looks different in every single one. So real quickly here, I wanted to discuss what it does look like in the games. Since Ocarina of Time is probably the closest game to the actual timeline that I want to follow, I'm going to be modeling the Temple of Time most directly from Ocarina of Time. Now, some of the issues with that is that Ocarina of Time can't determine whether it is trying to make a Romanesque build or whether it's trying to make a Gothic build. Even just looking at the exterior here, you can see that we have rounded arches everywhere. This is a Romanesque facade. And, more importantly, this is not the only game that features the Romanesque arches. If you look at Twilight Princess, which is supposed to also be using the exact same Temple of Time, it also uses the Romanesque arches. So, why don't we just change the whole thing to be Romanesque? Obviously, we have two different games supporting this idea. But let's take a look at the remastered version of Ocarina of Time, the 3DS version. In here, you can clearly see that these are very definite Gothic arches, and they actually made some attempts at making some ribbed vaults in here. And so it is that after careful consideration and much mourning, I have decided that I do not like this build, and I'm going to completely remake it. Boom. Now, don't you worry, I do have a backup saved, so if this goes horribly wrong, I can just, pop it back into existence. It'll be fine. So the first thing I need to do is reassess my color choices. Initially, I had built the outside of this building with the endstone bricks, and the reason I went with the endstone bricks is because I wanted that same sort of tannish color that's in Ocarina of Time, but I wanted it as though it was built 100 years prior. However, having this hideous abomination before me for so long, I quickly realized that the endstone brick is just way too bright. And thankfully, since I built that, we have come out with a new tan block, that being the mud bricks. The problem with mud bricks is they're actually just a little bit too dark. So what I need to do is I need to actually come up with some sort of gradient to go from the mud bricks all the way up to the endstone brick. It is at this point that I will note that I wish that Mojang would add more light tan blocks to the game, but alas, the ones that they have added, which it has been a welcome addition to have things like mud bricks, but they tend to have almost like a pinkish tone to them. I really wish that they were more just, tan. Anyway, regardless, this is what I've got for a gradient here. I think it's good enough. I wish that it had more of the brick-like texture instead of going to something smooth, but I have limited options doing that, so this is what you get. So let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to do for the inside color palette. We're going to start with the floor, and we actually have two different patterns that we're going to go with, the main one being a checkerboard pattern. And the main block I'm going to use is actually going to be polished diorite. I know, diorite is not everybody's favorite block, but the nice thing about it is not quite a perfect white, but it's still got a gray, and most importantly, it's more of a cool color. And I want this to be more of a cool color sort of build in here. And for the checkerboard pattern, I think in my original I just had a mix between polished diorite and polished basalt. And I guess that works alright, but something that I don't like is just how small this pattern is. It's just a straight up checkerboard, so I think I want to increase the size, the scale of the pattern. And what I could do, I could just be boring and just include, that instead. But I honestly kind of hate that. For one thing, you get this weird, just the lines going through it for the polished diorite, and you also get this weird, the individual little square effects in the polished basalt. It's not my favorite, so something I actually thought about doing is adding a little tiny bit of a gradient in the floor pattern here. Now, something that I will note is that I absolutely will not pair polished diorite with quartz or even calcite. I have to be careful with. And the reason for that is that the polished diorite is more of a cool color, and calcite and worse, quartz, are very muchly a warm white. You can see it has more of the warm sort of yellow and orangey tones to it This one to less of an extent, but it's still just a little bit more warm than I would like it to be. So to make this more of a cool white, we're going to make it go to either snow block, which is this one, or we're going to go with white concrete powder. I was originally going to have this sort of pattern for creating this line here, but you notice that there's this dark line on the polished diorite that for some reason isn't on this side. So to actually make this gradient blend a little bit better, I'm actually going to put the polished diorite on this corner and put my snow on this corner, so that way it actually blends into a more proper gradient that way. So then to do the same thing over here, I'm actually going to use smooth basalt instead of polished basalt for the darker side of things. Basalt blends really well with itself. And then for the lighter half, I actually am going to grab just plain old stone. Stone is a little bit more of a warmer gray than I would like, but I found that I didn't really like andesite here either, which andesite is ever so slightly cooler in color, but it was also a little bit on the bright side. So you can see I can grab it here and put it there. It kind of works, but I found that it was trying to blend too much in with my white, and I need that stark contrast from between the dark colors and the light colors here. There we go. I got the checkerboard pattern in place now. I'm not sure if I like the height of it. I didn't put it directly on the grass because I wanted you to be able to, climb at least some stairs to get up to it. I might move this in the future, and I haven't measured anything. I don't know where my pillars are going at this point. I was just putting in the checkerboard pattern. Another decision I have to make is whether I should go straight into the diamond pattern in the center, or if I should have a break of some sort of line going all the way down. I know in the actual game it just goes straight from checkerboard pattern into the middle pattern, in which case I need the middle pattern to be significantly brighter than the checkerboard, which is going to be a little bit rough because I used pretty much the brightest block in the game, the snow block, to make this area here. So maybe that was a mistake. I'm not sure yet. I honestly think that my problem at this point is that it's just too flat. I think no matter what color choice I do in the middle here, because I have a gradient on the corners on the checkerboard pattern here, but not in the middle, it just looks flat by comparison. So I think what I'm going to have to do is actually make little gradients in here instead. Whoa. Okay, yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I did end up using calcite. It is a little bit of a warmer white, but I figure for this center area where it's supposed to be a little bit brighter looking, that it's alright. It is a little bit warmer, but that's okay. So the next thing to do is actually lay out where my pillars are going to go. And I went ahead and kind of guesstimated just from this floor plan where I want to put pillars. So this is where my aisles are going to go, and this is the center area, which is twice as large as the aisles themselves. Now that we know where our pillars are going, we should probably actually pick what colors we're going to use for them. In the Temple of Time pictures that we have, it seems like it's the same sort of color as the floor. Maybe a little bit darker, but otherwise it's going to be pretty well the same. I'm not sure I like using the polished andesite here, just because I haven't actually used it anywhere else in my gradient here, so this is not going to stay. But honestly, I'm not really sure how I feel about just doing straight up diorite here, because it's just, I worry it's going to blend right in with the floor way too much. In the 3DS version, it also kind of looks like there's going to be a base around the bottom of each of these pillars. I'd almost be willing to go with this, but I just feel like it looks so fat, and honestly it's kind of infringing upon the space between the pillars here. It's just going to take up so much room. I'm not sure I'm like this particular look. Oddly enough, this feels more slender, even though it still sticks out the same amount here. There's something about it that just feels a little bit more elegant. I don't know, less blocky. I'll think about it. Yeah, I think that'll do. At this point, I'm starting to worry that my arches are maybe a little bit too tall, because I still have to put a gap for a roof and an extra level on top of that. And I really worry about the verticality of this because it needs to still look in proportion to everything else. I'm also starting to run dangerously close to these trees here. I think it's probably the better solution to just whack them out for the moment. If I need to put in some greenery around the edges, I'll do that again later. Copy. Paste. 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 Now the real question is, how much space do I leave between these bottom arches and the upper arches? Because if you look at this 3DS picture, I know I'm going back to the same one over and over again, but there is like no space between the top of that arch and the window up above. So that makes me think that there isn't much of a roof. And honestly, looking at the outside of this building, it does something really weird. That I'm not entirely sure what it's doing. I don't see a lower roof is the main thing. So, I don't know. I might just leave it as a fairly flat roof here because I'm going to do something very strange over the top of this. And we'll see how it goes. So I might just go straight from this line here, straight into the window for the upper area. A little something I've been doing here is I've actually been progressively making this pillar just a little bit darker as I go up. The nice thing about these walls in front is that it actually kind of hides my gradient a little bit, so it's not quite as stark as it otherwise might have been. And I'm just doing that so that way it looks like it gets darker as it approaches the ceiling. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make these windows the exact same size as the archway windows down here, and these are going to be squash vaults all the way down. I'm doing that because that's how it looks in the 3DS version of the game. I'm not convinced I love it, but I think it'll do. It's probably fine. Something I am encountering rather quickly, though, is the lighting down here is pretty abysmal. It's really tough because in the game, all of this area is very clearly lit by the windows. Like, you can even see sunbeams shining in through the windows. Of course, it has sunbeams shining in from both sides, which makes no sense whatsoever, but the same thing applies where Minecraft lighting is not going to be sufficient, and I really worry about adding in artificial lights because it's just going to be problematic for lighting, but I can't leave it like this. This is terrible. Of course, you know what my go-to solution for this is. Poke holes! Thunk. Hee hee. I don't know. Is that going to be enough illumination down here? It might be. Well, it's better. There's still these big, dark, shadowy spots directly in the middle. Of course, the other problem I have to face is inevitably going to be the fact that the moment it turns nighttime, that's all just going to turn instantly dark again. I might have to stick some lighting in the floor here. Yeah, alright. I'll probably go with that. I think I'll still have the holes poked in the ceiling because it definitely illuminates these pillars a lot better than if I left it in shadow. So, I think I'll leave that there. Alright, I've been putting it off long enough, and I should probably go ahead and start in on the tracery. This isn't the actual design I'm going with here, but it's just to give me an idea of depth. I think I do want the tracery moved back away from the arch a little bit, so I think that's what I'm going to go ahead and go with. For the rest of the tracery, I'm going to try to copy the 3DS window design as best as I can. It kind of looks like we have a double lancet Oculus design with then a third Oculus on top. So there's going to be 4 lancets down at the bottom, leading to 2 Oculuses, and then a third Oculus directly in the center at the top. Oh no, I'm going to need to use trapdoors, and I have a gray color palette. How am I going to do that? I really wish that the iron trapdoor would flip like any other normal trapdoor. The fact that you have to power it with redstone is really frustrating, because this would be perfect for this color palette. But no! Nope, I hate it. It's too much color. Okay, how's this? Do that. And then do the same thing, but modify that to half equals upper. It worked! Oh, it worked! I did it! Alright, now let's see if I can grab it and copy it over to the other side. Oh no. Oh no, I'm gonna have to do that for every one of these things. And you know, not only am I going to have to do each and every one of them one block at a time, going up here for all of these stupid windows and these ones, but I'm going to have to make the outside of the stained glass window as well. It's at this point that I have to ask myself, is it really worth it? I should probably find a different solution. Well, it's less than ideal, but it'll have to do, I think. Yeah. Now I just need to put an Oculus there, an Oculus there. I might need to lower this to make more room, and then a big Oculus in the center. I like these Oculuses here. They fit well in that space, but the center of the Oculus should really be right here, and that's what it should be lining up with. So perhaps I need to rethink these again. Okay, that's starting to look a little bit better. Now all we need to do is add an Oculus here at the very top. I like it, but I almost feel like there's too much empty space up here at the top. I wonder if I could divide up the space a little bit by adding a wall down the center. Yeah. I mean, it's better. I'll take that. Now for the glass itself, something that somebody commented on my stained glass window video is that you don't actually have to put a space between the glass to do a fog effect if you have a different colored of glass in this spot here. So if I were to put, say, blue on this level, you still get the opacity increase that you would otherwise. So I think I'm actually going to do 3 layers of glass. This first one inside is going to be white. The reason being is that I don't really want this this stained glass window to stand out too much. I don't want it to be so bright and colorful it contrasts too much with the rest of the build. And then I'm going to do a colored layer, just a single one. And then the outside layer is going to be a black stained glass, so that way it looks dark from the outside. So I think that's the look I'm going to go ahead and go for here. I'm also going to do a different color for each of these windows. This is something that I think would be neat, is to have each window representing a different one of the temples that I have in the rest of my build here. And then maybe the Temple of Time itself being represented as like a white and yellow, white and gold sort of window. So that means I need a green window, blue window, a red window, and then the white and gold window. So I think that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Yeah, alright, I can get behind that. They're all the same exact design, just with a recolor on them, but I think it works. I think the next thing we need to do is actually fill in these windows, and I'm not going to use the same tracery design for this. It kind of looks like there's actually, the wall goes up to maybe midway up here, and then the rest is going to just be 3 lancets, 2 small ones on the sides and 1 really tall one in the middle. Yeesh, I'm so used to working with huge giant windows that trying to make these itty bitty ones are kind of throwing me off a little bit here. I think that's alright. I think that's what we're gonna go with. I was running out of room here. I had to use that wall there. I'm not sure it looks the best, but it's what we're going with, so it'll be fine. I think the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is this back wall that's going to eventually lead to the Master Sword Chamber. I'm also looking at this and realizing that I have it really, really far this way. I need to actually push this back quite a bit because I still need to put the bell towers and stuff, and there still needs to be the room for the big water feature in the front. So I think I need to select this whole thing and just shove it back a good amount of blocks here. Move 20. Push. Alright, one big flat wall coming right up. Place, air, polished andesite. Yeah! You know, there's something about closing up this space that has just made this whole thing just seem incredibly small. I know it's supposed to be small according to the dimensions in the game, but it just feels so short and, I don't know, truncated. Just kind of ending right there. I think the next thing we need to do is actually implement the stairs that go along the back wall. It kind of looks like we have a section that sticks out a little bit, and then ramps that drop out on either side, and then they have a bit of an octagon shape. So the actual stairs are going to be diagonal going up the sides, and then the flat section in the front here is going to be the altar. I'm not sure if I should extend these ramps down into the aisles or not. It kind of looks like they stop at the pillars though, so I think that's what I'm going to try to do. But it does mean that these ramps are going to be a little bit on the small side. Kind of thinking this is what we're going to do, so that way it comes up the sides just like that. I think for the altar itself, I'm going to build the base of it with the polished diorite, but I think I'm going to make the top section of it out of black stone. I think that will not only look the most like how it is in the game, but it'll also add a lot more contrast, just because it will be the darkest stone type in this entire color palette, so it's going to give that just a little bit more pop and make it more of a focus. I mean, it's pretty simple, but it gets the idea across. And yes, I am aware that this back wall is looking ridiculously dark. I think a little bit of darkness should be fine, but it's maybe a little bit too dark. I'm not sure how I feel about that just yet. But I'll go ahead and finish this ramp here. I mean, something simple like that should be fine, honestly. Just kind of up the sides. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I think the only other thing to add now would be the carpet in front, which, you know, obvious solution is to, like, physically put carpet. But not only do I hate the color of wool, I worry that it's too warm of a red. I don't know. I'd almost rather use, if I can find it in this big list. Ah, there you are, nether wart block. I actually really like nether wart block. It's probably my favorite red color. The texture's a little bit gross sometimes, but it's just such a nice block. Uh-oh, we're gonna kill some of our lighting. Yeah, I like the color of it more. I almost wonder, there's supposed to be like a gold edge trim around the edges of this thing, and there is a way to do that with signs underneath carpet, so I almost wonder if I could go ahead and do that, where I swap out you and take some signs. Actually, this sign would be really ideal for using the new bamboo sign block that's coming out. That's a nice golden color, but I'm not on the snapshots yet, so, or anything. I don't know if that's out. So we'll just do this thing. Corner. Oh, that's not right. Do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then we come over with our carpet on the top and yeah. There we go. Nice carpet design. I like that better than just leaving the whole thing as just the plain red carpet. I almost wonder if, to solve our lighting for this altar, we should do a thing where we do that for slots for the spiritual stones to sit in. I don't know if I'm actually going to have spiritual stones in the game, but I figure for continuity's sake, we're going to make this altar look exactly the same as it looks in Ocarina of Time. I think functionality for this building, I'm actually going to make it so that way there will be little shrines in each of these sections over here, and as you explore the world, you're going to have places to unlock, so that way you can teleport between the shrine in the temple to different places around the world. I'm going to use that as like a fast travel sort of location. That way you have a reason to continually come into the Temple of Time and make it more worthwhile. I think that would be a good use of this space, so that way it's not just a big empty nothing. This sign, for whatever reason, is just bothering me. I'm just going to... Yeah. Here's an idea. Carpet. Yeah. Alright, I think the next thing to do is actually to design this door of time back here. And I'm going to make the outside edges of it. Oh, it's so tiny! Look at how tiny that little door of time is. It's supposed to be enormous. I might extend the sides of these and make the ramp go down into the aisleways a little bit, because honestly this just looks like a ridiculously small platform, and it's going to be hard to make a design based around this when it just looks so shrunken. Yeah, this door is supposed to be at least that big in my opinion, so because it is supposed to flank the altar a bit more than what it's currently doing. So yeah, I'm gonna adjust this whole platform. I'm not sure I like it. I really worry about how dark it is. I put some black concrete there just so that way it kind of looks like it fades into shadow, like the door's open. But man, this is really, really dark. And I know I'm going to be putting the Triforce up here. I wonder if adding some lighting to that would make it better. Now the obvious choice for making the golden triangles is to use actual gold. But I can't help but feel like this just looks like butter no matter what you do with it. Thicker rays or thinner rays? I think I was going more for what it looks like in Ocarina of Time, the original version, over here, and more like what it looks like in the 3DS version over here. I'm not actually sure. I kind of am leaning towards the thicker one because you get more variance in the actual line itself. Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and go with that. Well, I think with that, our room here is actually done. I do think I'm going to add on a little bit more on this front entrance. It just seems way too short to me. I think part of the issue is here I have like the wind temple, the water temple, the earth temple, and then the temple of time. It actually makes a little bit more sense. I suppose I could put another one that's representing the shadow temple, but I don't know. Yeah, I feel like adding that extra window just gives it just a little bit more space and makes it feel a little bit more filled out. I like that change. Post-recording shells here. There's the point where I actually look at my timestamps, and I've actually already recorded. I've completely finished the Temple of Time at this point, but this is already like 37 minutes long, and I feel like if I make this episode like a complete hour long, people are going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm not watching that. So I'm going to divide it into 2 episodes. Surprise! That means that we'll probably have back-to-back episodes. Your favorite. Just what you wanted. Yes. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. We'll go ahead and finish it later. Goodbye!